What's up everyone? Welcome to the channel. I'm Harrison and you are here for Tutorial Tuesday. So, to piggyback off of last week's male torso tutorial, today we are going to do the female torso. So, grab your pencils, pens, sketchbooks, and let's dive on into this one. So just like last week, I have a nice mixed media board here. I want to do pretty much the exact same thing. So if you watched last week's tutorial, you know that I was on a nice big board. I gave you 3 different body poses using blocks and structure and shapes to get the figure. That is exactly what we're going to do again today, just with the female figure. So on your page, we're going to start by sketching a light box. So in this top left corner, we're just gonna sketch a really basic 3D box in space here. And then once you get that box, go ahead and divide it. And then underneath, we're going to mirror that and get the pelvis. And you can also cut that in quarters. Great. So this is our building blocks. Literally our building blocks for the shape. Now that we know that this is the general pose, we know that the body is semi-curved in this position. This is a bit of an exaggerated curve. We're not actually gonna have like the body arching all the way back like that. So this will just help us get that general shape and structure down. You can achieve any shape, you can achieve any position of the body just by angling these boxes in different positions. So using these basic fundamental tools that I'm about to show you, you can achieve any shape and pose just by the way you position these initial boxes. This is the same for the male figure. This is going to be the same for any child or elderly figures. It's all the same building blocks. It's just some of the shapes and structures and features are slightly different from female to male, child to adult. So moving right along, we are going to go right ahead and start adding in details, such as a circle for the shoulder, and on the other side for the other shoulder. We can indicate the rib cage. So following this box, we're gonna draw pretty much like a bean shape. And we wanna just stay within this box. And this is gonna come up and down like this. I guess we can get a little fancy here. We won't really need to have that detail of the entire rib cage, but it's good to know your generic shapes of the human skeleton, especially when you're first starting off. It's good to know how the rib cage is shaped, some of the bones and some muscles and the hips, how all those things are shaped, so that when you're drawing, if you're drawing comics or just characters in different poses, you know how the skin sits and how it moves and pulls and tightens and loosens, and then how clothes should fit on top of that as well. So knowing the generic shape of the skeletal structure underneath all of this will help you become a more well-rounded artist. So drawing here the pelvis. Okay, great. And the last thing that we're gonna do before we move on to the detailing is draw the breasts. So these are very specific shapes. They're not circles. They are kind of a combination of like ovals and teardrops. Now every body is shaped differently, so I would highly suggest using reference material. Know how the skin folds, how body fat falls and lands upon the body. Again, looking at different figure studies will help you understand the mechanics of the human body, how everything lands and sits on the form. So based on the reference material that I have, these breasts are going to be more of the teardrop shape. So we can go ahead and indicate that on that side. And then because this figure is leaning in perspective, this right side closest to us is going to be a bit more larger because it is more visible. And then, all right, now we have all of our building blocks and our shapes that we need to define this character. So using my 6B pencil, which is a dark, soft lead, we can start outlining some shapes and defining these muscles. So right at the top here, we can draw the clavicle, and then the shoulder, get the breast here, and then we'll follow this curve to shape this part of the body here. What we're really gonna do is pretty much just follow this, like if you imagine like there's a line that goes all the way through, we're gonna follow that line. We want the abdomen to stay within the center of this like shape that we drew within the rib cage. So it's gonna come down to the rib cage and then kind of splinter off that way. So I'll show you with my pencil, dark pencil. Just like so. And then here the legs will come down. And then on the right side, and this cone or this cylinder will be the bicep. And then this part is going to be the back. So we can follow this and follow it into like the waistline. On second glance, unfortunately, the breasts are too high up on the chest. I knew something was sort of off. I drew the torso a little too elongated. I was trying to compress everything, and that just was throwing the whole dynamic here off. There should be like a triangle of space when you're looking at the character, the model I should say. There should be this triangle of space on the chest. We'll see if this can help us here. And then again, following this curve, you can add the abdomen, you can add the belly button, define the abs here. Oops, belly button is too high. And then what we can do is start to indicate some abdominals. Depending on your character, if you would like to add abdominals, you certainly can. Not every female is a bodybuilder, but you can know that the abs are within this general region here. And then to finish off this part of the arm, and just like so, there is our first pose. This is definitely messier than I would have liked it to be. I will admit right off the bat that female figure is not my strong suit. I have always kind of avoided the female figure just because as a man, I'm not familiar with the anatomy of the female figure. So I've always tend to just stick to male figures, male dominant stories. And I've learned over the years that by doing that, it has made my drawing a lot more difficult when I am drawing a story or female characters that much harder, because I have actively focused on not trying to learn the anatomy and the shapes and structure of the female figure. And by doing so, I tend to have a lot more difficulty drawing the female figure than if I would have just put in the same amount of effort as the male figure. So what I would suggest as we go through this, as you progress through your art and your drawing journey, focus on both the male and female figures. Go to drawing classes. There are so many different classes out there at your local community center, at your local colleges, wherever you can. Find still life and character drawing classes where you can see the figure in real life. Sometimes they have nude models, sometimes they have clothed models. So it just depends on what you're looking for. I highly suggest it. It is always great experience to sit and draw posed models. If you cannot find a class that does that, go outside, go to your local park, your mall, wherever large groups of people gather. Sit down with your sketchbook and just start drawing people. Look at how people are sitting, how they're standing, how they're leaning, and you can start to see the different shapes of people and understand the figure that way. Moving along to our next pose, we're going to be using the same technique here. We're going to be drawing a really exaggerated twisting body motion here. So using the same principle with the box. Okay, because this is going to be a very exaggerated pose, it's going to be a lot different than anything that we have done in the past, whether it was the male figure or this previous figure. It's going to be a bit condensed, and the structure of it's going to be a bit more condensed. So what we're going to want to do is, again, start with the rib cage. And I understand that sometimes drawing the box can be confusing, because you would think that the rib cage is going this way, or it would be against the larger curve instead of the majority of this. Because of the 3D squared, it does kind of throw your perspective off. But we are just using it as a guide. And so our shoulder will go here, our other shoulder will go here, and then with our pelvis, and then our center curve line will go all the way through here. So this is going to be the back side, and then this is going to be the front, twisting towards us. So what we can do is, right off of this circle, I'm going to draw a cylinder for the arm, and then off of this shoulder, I'm going to draw the cylinder for the arm here. Because of the position, the neck is actually very close, so neck is going to be right there. And then what we want to do to avoid the mistake of what happened here is just start plotting where some of these shapes are going to go. So the breast shape is going to fall pretty much within this general lower region. So we're again going to follow that same teardrop shape. And it's going to go connect up into the armpit. That is one key thing to note, is that the breast and even the male pectorals all connect into the armpit. So we want that teardrop shape to be over there. And then again on this side, following the same perspective. That's what this box is to help us for. We know that these need to be on the same plane, and that way they're not lopsided. And because this figure is stretching, the breasts here are going to look much different than they would if the person was just stagnant. So there will be a lot of stretching and pulling of the muscles and skin. And then switching to the 6B to help us define some of these shapes, we can start right here. Because of the gravity of the weight and the fat within the breast, they're gonna create this crease on top of the rib cage. And then you'll have your armpit, and then you'll have the start of the bicep and the shoulder there. And then we'll come back to the lower half because it's going to get a little bit tricky because of the way that the body is turning. So we'll continue to work our way down. Now this curve, because as I've mentioned, because we're turning here, this is going to be a really nice long S curve. So starting from the armpit, we're going to follow this shape and bring it in there. You can even bring it in further just because we can really exaggerate the twisting of the torso here. And then the back straight, and then this will curve all the way down. Again, we're going to create another S-curve shape following this path. We're going to go all the way around to this furthest buttock and go all the way and follow that. And then following this pelvis shape, we know that her leg goes that way. And we can kind of use this as like the back muscle here. And then we can start defining like the abs again if you want to include those. But this is just another different kind of pose that you can attempt. Again, adding more curves. It just makes their pose more interesting. It gives something dynamic to look at instead of just a stagnant pose. Now we're gonna do one more. It's no different than the last two steps that we just went through, but just a different pose here. Just to show you what you can achieve by using boxes and shapes, I'm just gonna go through it, just show you from start to finish how we can generate another pose. All right, and just like that, we did a quick pose. You can see I added in some of the abs just to show the definition of, you know, that you can add in some just minor definitions to really create a pose that showcases, you know, the figure and form. We didn't do anything, you know, over the top or, you know, that insane here. Just the basic building blocks to create the general female figure. Like I was saying, using these boxes, circles, cones, cylinders, teardrops, you can really create some very basic shapes that will generate very intense detail, such as what we got in all three of these examples. It's just a matter of practicing this. What I would suggest doing is, if you're uncomfortable starting right away, find a model online, print out the picture, draw the box, take a Sharpie, draw the box, draw the circles, and really understand how you see the form and shape of the person. Add the rib cage, figure out where that is on the person so that you know and understand and start seeing where these different pieces of the body are on an actual human being instead of just guessing. After you figure that out and you've learned and understand everything about the figure and the form and shape of a person, then you can start experimenting with different positions and shapes and body sizes and things like that. But I would really focus on getting the general fundamentals down first before you branch out and start experimenting with different things. And then the last thing I wanted to do before we wrap up completely is ink this. I just really want you to see what we achieved here without all of these really scribbly, sketchy lines. So I'm just gonna go ahead and ink this very quickly. I really hope you learned a lot from this lesson. I know I did. I always do when I am drawing. There is always something new to be learned. I definitely realize that I need to be paying attention more to my female figures, that I still have a lot to learn even as I am teaching you this, that there's a lot for me to learn on how to draw the female form. We are never done learning as artists. There's always something for us to learn and experiment and explore on. This is definitely a focus of mine. So maybe this year, oh, actually, you know what? I know this year that this is going to be a key thing I take away, and for the rest of the year, I'm going to make sure that I study the figure more, the male figure, definitely the female figure, and just make it a habit to just take my sketchbook places and start drawing people as I see them. And then also just really focusing more on the fundamentals of the figure. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you learned a lot. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing. And then once you do, hit that bell notification so you know when I upload the next Tutorial Tuesday. If for some reason you did not enjoy today's lesson, please let me know down in the comments why that is. I want you to know how to draw the things that you want to know how to draw. So whether that's hands, feet, other types of bodies, children, adults, elderly, whatever that is you want to know how to draw, please let me know down in the comments below, and I will make it a point to create those tutorials for you. Again, these are videos for you guys. I am only going to make what I find interesting, so if there's something I am missing, I want you to tell me so I can help you guys as well. If you've been following along with Tutorial Tuesday for the past year, I would love to see all of the drawings and progress that you're making, so please tag me on Instagram and TikTok, and I would be happy to check out your work. You can also follow me there as well and see all of the tips and tricks and things that I am posting frequently. Thank you again for joining me on another awesome tutorial. I know the schedule is a little bit different than it was last year, so if you're used to tutorials every single Tuesday, I will see you not next week, but the following week. Next week, you get to look forward to another fun art and creativity video. So until the following Tuesday, I will see you later. Remember to keep practicing, keep drawing, never give up. Bye, guys.